Strengths-based questions are being increasingly used by some employers who argue that the traditional competency-based question, give me an example of a time when, that we've talked about, are simply too formulaic and are allowing people to prepare too much in advance. So strengths-based questions works on the theory that there are things that we are all good at and are sort of part of us. There are things that we can be good at as well that we can learn to do. The things that we are naturally good at energize us. The things that we learn to do and become good at through hard work can sometimes sap our energy. So if I talk about myself, I deliver a lot of skill sessions to numbers of students. I can go in and do a very big skills session to a lot of students, feeling tired at the beginning, and I will feel less tired at the end, because that kind of delivery is genuinely a strength. If, on the other hand, I have to spend a whole afternoon flogging through an Excel spreadsheet in order to draw conclusions, I will probably feel particularly tired by the end of the afternoon. I will have done it, it will be an accurate document. But I won't have much energy, and I will be looking forward to going home. What employers are looking for is the person whose strengths align with their business. So if you're talking about a law firm and your strengths are attention to detail, you love getting things right, you love polishing things, you love going over things again and again, and you're going to be involved in a career which involves drafting, then you're going to really enjoy that. And you're going to be sitting there gaining energy from a task that requires that accuracy. And what the firms say to us is the great thing is that the person whose strengths align with our business is actually going to be happily working very long hours in our office, still being very productive at the end of a day and not wanting to go home. So that's the theory behind strengths-based questions. And what you need to do when you get the sort of questions that we're talking about here, what do you do to relax, how would your friends describe you, is you need to have a think, what are the skills that this organisation is looking for? So all the things we've talked about, teamwork, analytical ability, communication skills. And think about how you can try and reflect that in what you talk about your strengths. So many years ago, I had an unsuccessful interview that didn't result in an offer. And one of the questions I was asked was, what do you do to relax? And I was being interviewed by two men, hopefully slightly different era from today, who were gazing somewhat patronisingly at me. And I said, honestly, I enjoy sewing. And the expression on their face had to be seen to be believed. And I felt that at that point, I had lost the interview. What I could, however, have said is, do you know, something that I really enjoy doing to relax is to sew. And it's interesting because actually, when I'm sewing, I'm needing to have great attention to detail because I need to make sure that my stitches are neat and that they're tidy and that I'm working towards producing something throughout the whole of it. So how interesting that what I do to relax is actually not so dissimilar to what I might be doing in the office. And that's the way that I would suggest approaching this sort of question. So, I don't know.
Nothing for that? No. This is yours as well.
Okay, so this one, mine too. Ethics questions, particularly if you are expecting or hoping to work in a law firm, expect to get ethics questions. Your question might be as straightforward as, is it ever acceptable to lie? And I ask lots of people this question in mock interviews, and I get a variety of answers. Some people say, no, never. To which my answer is always, if you had a child, would you tell your child that there's a Father Christmas? And if your friend says, does my bum look big in this? Do you say yes or no? The illustration of that is that we all lie in our daily lives. That's who we are as people. However, professionally, as a solicitor, the answer is no, it is never acceptable to lie. So what you need to do is separate out the two things. This is my personal life. And yes, like everybody else, I lie, and I hope that they're not lies that hurt other people or lies that are positively beneficial. But I do lie. In my professional life, no, I never lie at all. My duty to my own firm, to my clients, is absolute truth, and it's the full truth, everything. Duty to the other side is not actually necessarily the full truth. You don't have to tell them things that you're not obliged to tell them that might be damaging to your own client. But everything you do say needs necessarily to be true. So there are some questions here that you might be asked. I think probably you've encountered some of these.
Yes, so I encountered some of these. One that threw me for in hindsight, no real reason was, when have you ever done something ethical? And an obvious example was just raising money for charity or volunteering, which I just didn't think of immediately. A more difficult one was, when have you ever done something ethically questionable? They seemed like they really wanted an answer. I thought, my answer to this was, it's not as exciting as you might be hoping. I raised a lot of money for a charity through running the New York Marathon. I couldn't afford off my own back to actually get to New York to do the marathon, but the charity offered a system whereby it gave you some of the money towards your trip if you reached certain sponsorship thresholds. And I said, on the one hand, I wouldn't have been able to raise anything had I not accepted that, but I felt it was ethically questionable in the sense that I was effectively using charity money to help fund my trip. So it was a balance, and I needed to come up with an answer. But as Claire said, if it's something professional, the ethics are absolute, and you cannot be lying in that kind of context. And lots of banks nowadays are really stressing that in their values. Same with law firms, consultants, accountancy firms, and many other professional services firms. The ransom question also came up, and I was doing a case study on a Middle Eastern startup, a new enterprise, and they said, well, the only way that this development can get up and running is if your client pays a bribe. What do you tell the client? And my answer was, obviously, that it is illegal, and they cannot do something like that if they don't expect potentially the consequences that will follow. So I'd be honest with the client and say, the climate in this place is maybe such that without paying the bribe, the project will collapse. But as your advisor, you must know this is illegal, and I don't advise that you do that. So you can be pragmatic with your answers. Frida?
Yeah, no, I think yeah, it's on. No, I got a similar question to, I think, similar case study about the bribe. And I think as well, what's kind of good to mention is kind of showcase a bit of legal knowledge, and you might have read things about fiduciary duties or whatever it may be, and explain that there will always be legal consequences if you do give certain types of advice.